Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us at the first meeting of the Colorado Produced Water Consortium. My name is Aaron Ray. I'm the Assistant Director for Energy at the Department of Natural Resources, and I'll be providing staff support to the consortium. We appreciate you all joining us, both members and members of the public. I want to start by recognizing Commissioner John Messner of the Energy and Carbon Management Commission, who's been one of the leading voices on produced water in the state and was integral in this legislation and the stand-up of the consortium. And I will turn it over to Commissioner Messner to welcome you all.
Thanks, Aaron. John Messner, Commissioner with the Energy and Carbon Management Commission. Certainly want to welcome everyone here today. Before we get rolling, though, I just want to look through the attendee list here and make sure that there's no one in the attendee list that needs to be elevated as a panelist. If you are on the consortium and you're in the attendee list, certainly raise your hand if you like, and we can elevate you as a panelist. Also want to welcome the public that have joined us here today for the first Colorado Produced Water Consortium meeting. Certainly excited to get working here today. And so I'm just going to start out quick with a couple of comments. First of all, I want to say to you all, welcome to the Colorado Produced Water Consortium. And most importantly, I want to say thank you for your willingness to serve. You all bring a wealth of knowledge and experiences to the work of this group, and we are very fortunate to have you all participating with us here today. As you'll hear a little later today, the development of a Colorado Produced Water Consortium has been in process for well over a year now. The goal of the consortium, as was developed by the initial stakeholders, many who are participating with us here today, and then memorialized in statute through House Bill 23-1242, is to bring state and federal agencies, research institutions, and institutes of higher education, affected and interested NGOs, local government, affected industries, and others, together to encourage the reuse and recycling of produced water and address barriers associated with the utilization of that produced water. The Colorado Produced Water Consortium will provide an informed path for the utilization of this water resource, both inside and potentially outside of the oil fields in Colorado. The outcome of this effort will build upon Produced Water Consortium efforts nationally, e.g. New Mexico and the Texas Produced Water Consortiums, and will identify and address critical scientific, legislative, and regulatory knowledge gaps needed to develop policies that are protective of public health, welfare, safety, the environment, and wildlife resources in Colorado. The primary goal of the Colorado Produced Water Consortium is to help reduce the consumption of freshwater use within oil and gas operations. Responsibilities also include making recommendations around, number one, developing an informed path for reuse and recycling of produced water inside and potentially outside of oil and gas operations within the state. Number two, measures to address barriers associated with the utilization of produced water. And number three, research to evaluate analytical and toxicological methods employed during produced water treatment and assess tools used to evaluate produced water and its potential for use outside of the oil field. So why utilize the format of a consortium rather than the more commonly utilized formats that you see in state government, such as task force, working groups, or committees? A consortium by intent is designed to bring together experts from diverse backgrounds together to engage in conversation, learning, and collaboration on topics it has been tasked with covering. It is by nature designed to be apolitical, analytical, and science and results based in its approach. This consortium approach is probably best described by a quote from Walt Whitman, which was famously utilized in an episode of my favorite TV show, Ted Lasso. That quote is to be curious, not judgmental. To be curious and not judgmental is how I hope we can engage with both the topic and one another throughout the work we will be undertaking with the consortium. To both share our perspectives and knowledge on the topics and be curious about the knowledge and experiences from our fellow consortium members. To be curious about the possible challenges and possible solutions, understanding that it will not be possible for all of us to agree on the things we will be discussing within the consortium, but it is my hope that through our work and our process that we can embrace the concept of be curious, not judgmental in our approach. We have a lot of work to get accomplished and a really ambitious time frame to get it accomplished in. I'll talk more about that later in the day, but I did want to start our day with that thought. So again, I want to welcome everyone to the Colorado Produced Water Consortium and thank you for offering your time, your knowledge, your experiences and insights to our process. And with that, we've got a lot of folks here today. I think it's a good time to get to know one another initially here. I would like to go around the room and give each individual a couple of minutes to introduce themselves, a little bit about their background, indicate which seat they've been appointed to within the consortium, and what made them want to participate in this work. Understanding that we have over 30 people involved in the consortium here, and we've got a limited amount of time today. I'd love it if we could keep our comments to like 2 or 3 minutes, just to give us an initial impression on who you are. But first, before we start with that, I want to hand it over back to Aaron, who's the Assistant Director for Energy Innovation at the Department of Natural Resources, and let him introduce himself, as well as the new director of the Colorado Produced Water Consortium. So hand it over to you, Aaron.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thanks again for all of you for joining us. As I mentioned, my name is Aaron Ray, Assistant Director for Energy Innovation at DNR. I serve in the Executive Director's Office at the department, and my role is to advise Executive Director Dan Gibbs on energy issues. In that capacity, I work closely with the ECMC, as well as other DNR divisions and other state agencies on energy policy, and we'll be providing support to the consortium. So looking forward to working with you all in this capacity. I have 2 sort of staff announcements that I want to make. The first is that the bill that creates a consortium provides for the hiring of a director who is positioned within the Executive Director's Office at DNR. And we are pleased to announce that Hope Dalton will serve as the first director of the consortium. Hope comes to DNR with extensive experience in state and local government, as well as experience working on water quality issues. We appreciate Hope joining us today. She is with us, although she's not officially started at DNR yet, but she made time to be with us today, which we appreciate. And I will note that once Hope comes on officially, one of the first things that she'll be doing is reaching out to each of you individually to get to know you and your interests and your background, so you can expect some outreach from Hope very soon. But very pleased to announce Hope's joining DNR as director of the consortium. Hope, do you just want to say hello so people get to know you, and we'll have more opportunity for them to get to know you better later on?
Thank you, Aaron. I'm so excited to be the first director of the consortium and to work with all of you. My first date to start will be September 25th, and I'm looking forward to knowing what brought you to the consortium and what kind of goals and objectives you feel would really show success of the consortium. Thank you.
Thanks, Hope. The second announcement that I wanted to make is, as you all may be aware, House Bill 23-1242 requires that the DNR Executive Director appoint members of the governing body of the consortium. Executive Director Gibbs appointed 3 members of the governing body earlier this summer. Those folks were integral in getting all of you here and getting this process started, and they will continue to serve as the governing body. That bill requires that one of the members of the governing body is a representative of Colorado's Department of Public Health and Environment. And we've been very fortunate to have Tricia Oath serve in that capacity on the governing body for the last few months. But we're really happy that CDPHE's energy liaison, Tessa Sorensen, will be replacing Tricia as the CDPHE representative for the governing body. Executive Director Gibbs made that appointment effective today. And we are really excited about Tessa's expertise. She has extensive experience in the oil and gas industry. She is the energy liaison at CDPHE, works closely with ECMC. So she will be a terrific asset to the consortium. So we're delighted that Tessa is able to represent CDPHE on the governing body, and we'll give her a chance to introduce ourselves when we go around the room. But welcome, Tessa, and thank you. And with that, I will hand it back to Commissioner Messner if you want to handle the introductions.
Great. Thanks, Aaron. And welcome, Hope, to the consortium. Certainly excited to have you on the team, to be working here with you. So best way to do introductions, I think, is I'm going to call folks out as I see you on my screen. We've got a lot of folks here today, and I've got two different screens. So if I miss you at the end, please raise your hand and let me know that I've inadvertently not called your name. So first, I'm going to start with Clay Terry as the first person I see.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Commissioner. The opportunity to participate in the Produced Water Consortium is a great honor for me. I spent a career, or a first career, say, in oilfield services. I spent 15 years with the ancient Western Company of North America that was merged with BJ Services in 1995. And since that merger, I worked for Halliburton in oil and gas co-investment with strategic clients in their integrated solutions group, and where we developed multiple resources around the nation and the world as an investment partner. Some is Elm Coulee Field in the Williston Basin, which we initiated and developed as a participant with Lyco Energy and Interplus Resource. In that corridor, I became interested in the team that launched in 2012, and was honored to have the opportunity to investigate technologies and service options, for our clients involving produced water reuse for fracturing operations. Since that time, I've left Halliburton in an early retirement, and I'm an independent energy consultant, looking for opportunities to assist people in getting produced water into the oil field recycling arena, as well as opportunities for outside the oil field. And I'm greatly honored to participate in this team, and thank you, John, for the opportunity.
Great. Thanks, Clay. Great to have you. Next, Michelina Pollock.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Commissioner Messner. I am Michelina Pollock. I am the Executive Director for the Energy Council. I am representing the San Juan Basin operators and area. My background's a little interesting. I don't have extensive background in energy, but I have a master's in nursing. I'm an associate professor and have worked in public health policy. I'm also a fourth generation Coloradoan here in La Plata County, specific to agriculture. So the produced water idea down here for us is important. And also we have an extensive research. BP had pretty extensive produced water research down here. We have a couple published papers. So I'd like to bring that experience to the consortium. So I appreciate the appointment. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, and great to have you here. Next is Irene Andrus.
Thank you, Commissioner. Hi, my name is Irene Andrus, and I represent the Environmental Justice for the Sierra Club. I'm a retired IT business analyst with a career that includes software development, ERP implementation, systems integration, B2B transactions, back office, mobile workforce, to name a few. And for industries that include telecom, electric utilities, and energy, where I spent several years supporting geologists, geophysicists, and environmental health, safety, and environment groups, and the reservoir engineers. And I helped support the passing of HB 23-1242 this year, which resulted in the formation of this consortium. Hopefully, I can help our consortium by ensuring that we fulfill the requirements that were defined in HB 23-1242, and that we develop solutions that are user-friendly and ensure that the environment and citizens are not negatively impacted, and ensure that the energy industry water usage is respectful of the water ecosystem. And I generally tend to bring holistic solutions to most issues. I'm looking forward to working together with this really distinguished group of people with such an important issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. Great to have you. Next, I have Joseph Ryan.
Thanks, Commissioner. I'm Joe Ryan. I'm a professor of environmental engineering at the University of Colorado Boulder. A recent experience in dealing with oil and gas involved a big NSF study called Air, Water, Gas, and continue to do some research for the Health Effects Institute in Boston. I look forward to learning more about how we deal with produced water and sharing what I've learned over the recent years. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Ryan. Appreciate having you here. Next is Ember Michelle.
Hi, yes, good morning. Thank you, Commissioner Messner, for the opportunity to join the consortium. And I represent and work with the Southern Ute Indian tribe in Ignacio, Colorado, so in the Four Corners area. And I look forward to joining the consortium and bringing some knowledge of my background, which is natural resource management in energy. I've worked for some majors as well as less capitalized operators, so I have some knowledge on that, and then preserving our natural resources. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Great to have you on the team. Next up is Mackenzie Smith. Yes, we can hear you.
Great, my box turned yellow. Perfect. My name is Mackenzie Smith. I am a petroleum engineer, graduated from the University of Tulsa. I've got just over 10 years of experience in the oil and gas industry, with over half of that being in the Raton Basin in southern Colorado, primarily CVM operations. And now I am serving as an independent contracting consultant for the operators in the basin, to collaborate together with the three operators to represent them equally. I was interested in the consortium because of the vast differences that produced water found there has compared to other water production throughout the state of Colorado, as well as the positive impacts that the water brings on the community. So I'm excited to work with you all. Thank you.
Thanks, Mackenzie. Great to have you. Next up is Councilman Strode.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sean Strode. I am a counselor for the city of Rifle in Western Colorado. I've been on council for 6 years now, and we're heavily involved in oil and gas in this region. As a daytime job, I work for Colorado Mountain College, where I'm a administrator for online learning and a business faculty. I'm really interested in being a part of this as an elected official, just because I've been involved in both sides of the energy. I've worked on the pipeline, and I'm also part of the Garfield County Clean Energy, utilizing all of our resources. And I'm passionate about making smart decisions that'll foster longevity and natural resources while still supporting our local economies and residents. So really looking forward to this. Thanks for having me.
Great. Great to have you. And I promise, even though I promised last time I said your name, that I would pronounce it correctly. But from now on, I'm not going to make that mistake. So next up, I have Jeff Kirtland.
Good morning, Commissioner. Thank you so much. And it's really an honor and a privilege to be a part of this outstanding group. My name is Jeff Kirtland. I am the regulatory manager for Terra Energy Partners, representing the oil and gas industry as part of the Piceance Basin. And I worked in the Piceance since 2012 for two different operators. Prior to that, I spent about 10 years working for Mesa County Valley School District 51 in public education, and served as a PR representative for St. Mary's Hospital in healthcare prior to that. So I was pleased to grow up in Western Colorado and be able to work there and continue to do so. excuse me, the Piceance Basin, we're really excited to be a part of this. The Piceance Basin and operators rely heavily on produced water as a part of our operations currently. And so we're pleased to be able to and hopefully share a lot of the things we've learned and the approaches that we've learned in how to really utilize recycled water in a way that reduces our usage of fresh water. We have a prominent number of wells that are produced and typically they're natural gas wells. So it's very different than a lot of the basins around the state where we produce a large amount of water along with our natural gas wells. But I'm really looking forward to being a part of this group, and this is a fascinating topic. And our operations are as I said, very reliant on this as a resource. And I'm pleased to be a part of future conversations. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Great to have you. Next up is Tracy Kozlov.
Commissioner Mesner, Tracy Kozlov. I'm one of the consortium's governing body members, and I come to that position because I work at the Colorado Division of Water Resources. My title is Deputy State Engineer. And so I come to you with a background of water administration, water regulation in terms of quantity, things like well permitting questions that might come up in the course of our work here together. Hopefully I can assist providing some explanations for how our system works currently for produced water. So that's what I can bring to the table. And thanks for making me a part of this.
Great, thanks, Tracy. Next up is Michael Freeman.
Thanks, Commissioner Mesner, and good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Freeman. I'm one of the environmental NGO seats on the consortium. I'm an attorney with the public interest law firm of Earth Justice. I'm based in Denver. And in that role, I've represented citizen groups and conservation groups since about, I think, 2008 on a variety of oil and gas matters. Before what was used to be called the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, I've represented groups in the emission change rulemakings back in 2020, in the well integrity rulemaking a little bit before that, and a number of other prior rulemaking initiatives, as well as some other matters before the commission. We've also been really active on oil and gas issues on public lands, involving Bureau of Land Management lands, National Forest lands as well. And I'm really looking forward to being part of this consortium and working with all of you to develop some policy and legal solutions. And frankly, learning quite a bit about produced water. I really appreciate the folder of documents that was circulated. That was really helpful background reading for me. And I'd just like to thank Commissioner Mesner and the consortium for inviting me to be part of this effort.
Thanks, Mike. Great to have you. Next up is Chloe Danforth.
Hey, everybody. My name is Chloe Danforth. I'm a senior scientist at the Environmental Defense Fund, and I sit in another one of the ENGO seats here. I have been with EDF for about 8 years, working on produced water issues most of that time. My background is in environmental engineering, and at EDF that's sort of shifted to thinking about environmental health and environmental, I should say, and risk assessment to human health and the environment. I have done a lot of research thinking about what we know is in produced water, what we don't know, any of the toxicity associated with that, and how that overlaps with the regulatory environment, both at a federal and state level. I'm also at the New Mexico Produced Water Research Consortium, where I am a member of the toxin risk subgroup, and I'm a technical advisor to our team members who are on the Texas Produced Water Consortium. So I'm really happy and excited to be part of this one, and I feel like I'm collecting produced water consortiums. But I really am honored to be a part of this group. Thank you.
Great, thank you. It's great to have you. Eric England.
Good morning, Commissioner. Thank you all. I look forward to working with you. I'm a farm kid from Northern Colorado. I had the opportunity to work my whole career in water resources, agricultural, residential, municipal, and commercial water users. And in the last 10 years, working in the oil and gas industry for Anadarko Petroleum and now for Occidental Petroleum in their water resource team, managing operations here in Colorado. And so I'll be serving with this group, providing some of the experience and expertise in produced water management. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Great to have you. John Heil.
Good morning. Thank you. It's an honor to be here serving on this board with all you folks, and it's nice to see some familiar faces. I'm John Heil. I am a representative for the Energy and Carbon Management Commission of Colorado. I've been at the ECMC, previously COGCC, for about 4.5 years now. I work with produced water in various ways as it pertains to oil and gas. And I'm based out of Grand Junction, Colorado, so mostly up here in the Piceance Basin. As Jeff was saying earlier, we had a bunch of produced water up here in the Piceance Basin, and I also am an outdoor enthusiast and enjoy spending time on the river. So it's very important to me that we are preserving our fresh water and figuring out a better way to reuse and recycle some of this produced water we got around. So thank you, and look forward to working with you guys.
Great, thanks, John. Commissioner Pinter.
Good morning, everybody. Commissioner Emma Pinter. Like all have said, I'm really excited to be here with all of you. It's been impressive to sit back and listen to the depth of experience being brought to this conversation. Just a little background on me. I serve as an Adams County Commissioner. Adams County, just by our stats, is a little over 500,000 people, 1,000 square miles, and we are a minority majority county as well, one of only 2 in the state of Colorado. We also produce a ton of the state's oil and gas. We currently are the 2nd largest oil and gas producing county in the state and have seen a 38% increase in oil production through May. So that continues to be an impact to our community and wanting to make sure that everything exists in harmony with residents and community. I also had previously served 2 terms with the City of Westminster on their city council. And during that time, City of Westminster, we run our own water. And so I'm very familiar with water production, water safety, and making sure the residents have access to water and also recycled water that is available through different municipal water service guidelines. So I'm really interested to be learning a lot from you as experts. And I'm glad that Adams County and local government is here at the table.
Great, thanks, Commissioner Pinter. It's great to have you here. Tessa Sorensen.
Hello, I am Tessa Sorensen. I use she, her pronouns. I am the energy liaison for the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. And very, very excited to be here, just like all the rest. I am one of the governing body members as of today. I have a background that's really deep in petroleum engineering. So I started as a geological engineer across the Rockies and then moved to petroleum engineering. And I have actually worked around the world on oil and gas locations, predominantly with ExxonMobil for almost 13 years. My last position was actually as a professor of practice at Colorado School of Mines for drilling and completions engineering before I joined the CDPHE. So I'm very happy to talk about that and bring that to the table and learn more about water as we go.
Great, thanks, Tessa. Grant Tupper.
Thank you, Commissioner. Also, like everyone else, happy to be here and excited to be part of this consortium. I am the Director of Operations and Business Development for Select Water Solutions here in the Rockies region. We are a nationally publicly traded oil field service company with a focus in treating and reusing water, produced water in the oil field. We have some of the largest projects going in the nation to do that, and some of the larger projects here in Colorado to do that. I represent part of the expertise in experience in produced water here in Colorado. Have several projects that are ongoing and several projects starting up to reuse water in both the DJ and Piceance basins in the state. And I'm really excited to hear everybody's ideas and work forward on this consortium to change over from using fresh water to more recycled water in the state of Colorado.
Great, thanks, Grant. Next up is Nikki Wells.
Good morning, everyone. I am Nikki Wells. I am the director of BPUF's Environmental Justice Program. I come from a little different background than all of you experts. I am very glad to be here and serve on the consortium. I have a background in education. I've been a teacher for over 20 years. I'm still in education. I came into environmental justice about 3 years ago. I serve on the board for the Greenhouse Connection. And I just am happy to be here and learn a lot. I am a Colorado native. My family is actually from Texas. And what brought me to this panel is the reason why my family moved here from Texas is because the water was bad in Texas, in our little hometown that we are from, and it was hard on my family's teeth. And I just want to make a better way for people in disproportionate neighborhoods. That's what BPUF is. I am a voice. I am an advocate. I was able to step onto a platform and speak for people who are not empowered, are not able to use their voice. Thank you for having me, and I'm excited to learn so much from all of you guys.
Great, thank you, Nikki, and we're certainly excited to learn from you as well. Next, I have Jolie Bronner.
I like that I still wasn't ready, even though we had all of that time leading up to this. Thank you for that. I'm glad I get to go after Nikki. Great to see you, Nikki. My name is Jolie Bronner. I use she, her, aya pronouns. I am representing an NGO in the state that works on advocates for policies related to environmental justice and conservation. I'm one of the Senate President appointees to the commission. And I am here representing, I work for the Alliance for Collective Action in Denver. I am the director of the Coalition for a Regenerative Future. Our work is focused on a regenerative future for everyone. That is where human needs and planet needs are met abundantly and equitably. Our work really exists at that intersection of social justice and environmental justice. I do a ton of deep community listening. My main work is finding all of those amazing grassroots ideas and voices and elevating them to our grass tips leaders. And that's what we do. We are conveners at the heart of what we do. Most of my work is focused in huge work in the just transition space, huge work in the regen ag space, and a ton of work in workforce development to support both of those. And I tie a neat bow around it with leading the largest crowdsourced policy platform in the state, elevating ideas again, directly from community to our leaders as a resource. They are shared with everyone, regardless of what side of the aisle they sit on. Anecdotally and personally, I come from a community organizing background. I've run community-based organizations. And in 2021, I served as vice chair for the Congressional Redistricting Commission for the state of Colorado. So I am familiar with working collaboratively with a lot of people who have been appointed to commissions and coming from different places. Additionally, I became almost our subject matter expert on public comment. I'm obsessed with elevating community voice. I love deep community listening and really am excited to see where the community input and listening can be incorporated here as we also learn and work collaboratively to support Coloradans for a better future for all of us. So excited to learn from all of you and collaboratively work on something really amazing together. Thanks for being here today, and I'm glad to be here too. Looking forward to getting to work.
Great, thank you very much, Jolie. Next up, And I just had to switch my screen, so I'm hoping I don't lose anyone. I've got Thomas Borch.
All right, good morning, everybody. And thanks for inviting me to participate, John Messner. So I'm a professor at Colorado State University in the departments of soil and crop sciences and also in chemistry and civil environmental engineering. I've been working on oil and gas related research for the past 15 years, especially focused on developing methods for toxicological and chemical characterization of produced water. And lately, I've been spending a lot of time on evaluating treatment and reuse of produced water for agricultural irrigation. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Appreciate you being here today and participating with us. Next up, I have Zahi Kath.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Zahi Kath. I'm a professor of environmental engineering at Colorado School of Mines. I've been with mines for close to 17 years now. I also have a joint appointment with the National Renewable Energy Lab. And in the last 16 years, I've been doing research on developing technologies for water treatment, specifically for treatment of produced water from oil and gas for beneficial reuse. One of my passions is potable reuse of reclaimed water, and we're trying to develop technologies to bring water to the highest quality possible. So I'm happy to be here with all of you.
Great, we're excited that you're here with us as well, so thank you. Next up is Barbara Vasquez.
Morning, everybody. As has been said often, I'm really glad to be here with this diverse group of people interested in working on getting produced water to the point it can be reused both within the industry and potentially outside the industry. I live in Jackson County. I'm sitting as a representative of Western Colorado Alliance, which is a grassroots community organization, very interested in environmental issues. My background is in chemistry and engineering. I have spent 7 years with the NIH doing biomedical research, and then changed careers and went into the semiconductor industry. From that perspective, I have some expertise in water quality that's far above what we need for water to drink. But I have been working here as a citizen scientist in Colorado since 2006, focusing on public lands, water quality, air, and oil and gas. My interest in this consortium is, from many of the experts here, getting sufficient knowledge to ensure that whatever schemes we come up with for treating and recycling produced water, there aren't unintended consequences to environment, particularly air quality and human health. It's going to be a big challenge, I think, because just as Chloe said, there's so many unknowns in terms of the content of produced water. It varies over time from a particular well and from well to well in the same field, let alone from well to well across different fields. So it's going to be a very interesting challenge. But producing recommendations for policy for ECMC and rulemaking is at the heart of our matter, and I look forward to participating in that. Thank you, John.
Great, thank you, Barbara. Doug White.
Good morning. I'm Doug White, joining as an industry produced water expert. I am based in Denver. I've been in the energy industry for 27 years. I'm the executive vice president of NGL Water Solutions. We are a publicly traded company, and we manage approximately 2.5 million barrels per day of produced water in Colorado, New Mexico, and Texas. We're one of the founding members of the New Mexico Produced Water Consortium. We're a member of the Texas Produced Water Consortium. We've been operating the DJ Basin since 2011. and we handle approximately 50% of the produced water in the DJ. We have a background in recycling and also treatment to discharge of produced water. That was in Wyoming under an NPDES permit. So we have a deep history in being able to treat and reuse water. We currently recycle about 10% of our water. So we do a lot of that. We have a lot of insight into that and how it works and what's successful. And I look forward to joining the effort and promoting additional use of produced water, especially in Colorado. And thank everyone for letting me be a part of the conversation.
Great, thanks, Doug. All right, everyone's moving around on my screens now. How about Brandy Honeycutt?
Good morning, everyone. I'm very grateful to be on this consortium. I work for the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment in the Water Quality Control Division. I've been here for about 5.5 years, and my main role has been to develop water reuse regulations for the state. So I have worked with stakeholders to add various uses of reclaimed water, gray water, and even potable water reuse to protect public health and the environment. So my main, I guess, tie with oil and gas was when we had a rulemaking to allow reclaimed water, which is black wastewater, to be used for fracking. So kind of the reuse of wastewater for the beginning of this process. And so I'm looking forward to talking about the produce water, kind of the tail end of the process, and how we can make even more efficient use of the water involved in this water intensive process. So I'm looking forward to learning a lot and working with you all, and really grateful to be here.
Great, thank you, Brandy. Well, Tricia Pfeiffer, although I know that's not Tricia Pfeiffer.
Yeah, good morning. Hi, my name is Ian Bowen. I'm a senior hydrogeologist at EPA Region 8 based here in Denver. I primarily work on pollutant abatement transport at contaminated sites, but Tricia is my supervisor and she was unable to make it today, so she asked me to sit on her behalf due to that prior commitment. So this will be hopefully the last time you see me, and so I'll instead tell you more about Trish. She's an environmental engineer by background, and she's been with EPA Region 8 for 20 years. She's currently my manager, which is the manager of the hydrogeology section, and she's also Region 8's energy point of contact. She spent her entire career focused on water resource protection with respect to oil and gas development. Some of the highlights from that are she served as the regional representative on the Water Reuse Action Team. She co-led the National Oil and Gas Extraction Wastewater Management Report. She served as a lead reviewer on energy development projects for the NEPA program, as well as previously serving as an underground injection control permit writer for Class 2 injection wells. So she's got a pretty diverse experience related to produced water, as well as water disposal and water reuse. And she's really excited to be working with the consortium. And thank you for letting me sit on her behalf.
Well, thank you for being here. I appreciate that. Harmony Cummings.
Hi, my name is Harmony Cummings, and I'm so excited to be here. I worked in oil and gas for 8 years. However, I am here currently sitting in an environmental seat. I have been to scores of fracking sites across the country, and it was my job to do risk management and track inventory. So I come to this consortium with that background. I was also the bill champion for HB 1242. So really grateful for the work that Commissioner Messner and Professor Rosenblum have done starting the consortium, and really proud of the work that we've done with several of the people on this call to bring it into legislation so that it can have a standing, and really excited to see the work that moves forward. I sit in a variety of resiliency and environmental spaces at the city of Denver and state level. And again, really excited to be here with all of you today and co-create solutions. Currently, it looks like we're about at 6% recycling, and we have a lot of room to really improve that in a way that's protective of the health, environment, communities, and looking out for the future of our children. Most important role that I hold is being a mother, and the love that I bring for my babies and all the babies I want to have shown in this space. So thank you for everyone.
Great, thank you, Harmony. And thank you for all the work you've done in this space up until this point, and will continue to do. So great to have you here. Wow, everything's really moved around now. How about Kevin Chan?
Hello, my name is Kevin Chan. I'm coming in as from a non-governmental agency, a nonprofit. I also represent disproportionately impacted neighborhoods. My background is I was in the military for about 13 years. I served in the Marine Corps, left as a staff sergeant in the Marines. So I've been to various countries where water was, has been an issue. We had to bring in bottled water or purify our own. So being around the world and seeing these countries not have clean, accessible drinking water, that is, that hits deeply to me in my heart, because a lot of East Asian countries do not have access. And being able to sit on this and being able to influence hopefully some of these policies, that would be a highlight of my life, to be able to bring a life source to all of humanity and Colorado. And because we are a headwater state, and everything that we does affect downstream as well. So we also have to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Great to have you here. How about Dr. James Rosenblum?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, John. Excited to be here. It's been a cool, fun road this past 12 months. So I'm a research professor at Colorado School of Mines in their Civil and Environmental Engineering department. Have been in the produced water space for over 10 years, doing treatment research, developing technologies to identifying known and unknown chemicals in produced water, so also numerous toxicity studies. So a lot on the academic side, and I do sit on one of the academic seats for the Produced Water Consortium. I also have a small oil field service company treating fresh water and recycling produced water in the Rocky Mountain region. So kind of sit on both sides of industry and academia. And yeah, just excited to be here and to see all the awesome things that we can do together and learn and grow as a group.
Thanks, James. Great to have you here, and appreciate all the work that you've done up until this point as well. Mark Hefta?
Hey, thanks. Yeah, thanks again for being appointed to the consortium. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm Mark Hefta. I'm a water engineer with Chevron. I've been in the water industry my whole career, really starting as a consultant for municipalities, doing water master planning and water and wastewater treatment design. And then about 12 years ago, I came over to Noble Energy as a water engineer and water planning. And with Chevron, with the merger, I'm with Chevron doing a similar role, primarily looking at water strategy and sustainability, with recycling being a huge component of that. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I just looking forward to meeting everybody and really developing produced water as a resource is really what I'm excited about. Thank you much.
Thanks, Mark. Great to have you here. So I feel like I hit everyone, but please raise your hand if I've missed someone. I will acknowledge that we do have some other folks that you're seeing on the screen that are with us here today. We have Hannah Hickam and Jenny Lehman, who are both executive assistants with ECMC, and appreciate them helping us stay organized and helping us with the meeting here today. There's also Wendy Padia and Kyle Davenport, who can introduce themselves when they talk about the topics that they're going to talk about a little later in the meeting, as well as Marv Widener and Jeremy Stevens with Managing Results LLC, who again will introduce themselves a little bit later and talk a little bit about strategic planning for the Produced Water Consortium. And I guess I should introduce myself. My name is John Messner. I'm a commissioner with the Energy and Carbon Management Commission. I've been on the professional commission now a little over 3 years, and prior to that was appointed to the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission as a volunteer commissioner while I was serving as a commissioner for Gunnison County. I am sitting in the seat with ECMC on the commission with expertise in land use and local government. And part of my experience was in my previous life. I was working as a planning commissioner with Gunnison County before becoming a county commissioner, where we developed some of the first oil and gas regulations in the state for a local government. And so I had an opportunity to get some experience in master planning and regulatory processes around oil and gas and produced water and that experience. And then certainly my everyday experiences in those worlds now. And so I'm super excited about the Colorado Produced Water Consortium and the work that we're going to be doing here, and appreciate everyone participating. I'm trying to keep track here. There are a couple of folks that had emailed and indicated that they weren't going to be able to make it today. And I don't have my list up right now, but I know that Jacob Smith from CC4CA was not able to make it today. He apologizes and is looking forward to meeting folks at the next meeting. And I will pull up my list here in a second and remind myself who else wasn't able to make it so that I can acknowledge them as consortium members here in a second. So with that, if I look at my run of show here, I think the next step is to introduce Wendy Padilla and Kyle Davenport. Kyle Davenport is a Senior Assistant Attorney General for Natural Resources in the Environment section at the Attorney General's office, and Wendy Padilla is the Chief Operating Officer for DNR. They're going to talk a little bit about boards and commissions and kind of the roles and responsibilities and expectations of being a participant in boards and commissions at the state. And so with that, I will kick it off to them, although I don't know who's starting.
Thank you, John. And I think I'm going first, and then Kyle will round it out. So as John said, my name is Wendy Padilla. I am the Chief Operating Officer for the Colorado Department of Natural Resources. I've been with the department 21 years, most of that time with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and the last 4 years with the Executive Director's Office. And I manage and help with a lot of internal operations with the department, including human resources, accounting, procurement, technology, and fleet functions. And one of the pleasures of this year has been to travel around and meet many of DNR's boards, commissions, and advisory groups and committees to give this training, but then to hear about and learn about all the wonderful work that's going on through our boards and commissions. So with that, I will share my screen and start us off. Okay, so I will touch on a little bit about the Department of Natural Resources, our budget process, the DNR Public Service Code of Ethics, accessibility to our meetings, media contacts, and then our legislative policies, procedures, and timelines. And then Kyle will touch on different topics as well, including the Open Meetings Law, the Open Records Act, conflict of interest, public comment, and that type of thing. So about the Department of Natural Resources, our mission is to manage and conserve Colorado's natural resources for the benefit of people today and tomorrow. DNR has 6 divisions who manage water, land, wildlife, minerals, energy resources, and outdoor recreation of the state. We have a little less than 1,670 full-time employees, a budget of about $494 million annually, 1,100 temporary employees, and more than 6,000 volunteers. And most of those temporary employees and volunteers are in our Colorado Parks and Wildlife division. Our divisions within DNR, you can see below on the bottom of the screen, our Executive Director's Office, Division of Reclamation, Mining and Safety, Energy and Carbon Management Commission, the State Land Board, CPW, the Colorado Water Conservation Board, and the Division of Water Resources. And you can see in terms of budget and our FTE, the relative size of each of our divisions. Importantly, in our Executive Director's Office, we have few FTE, but you can see that our budget includes our Colorado Wildfire Action Program, as well as our Avalanche Information Center. I'll go through our annual budget process to give you a little orientation of how that works. We begin 16 to 18 months prior to when our fiscal year begins in July 1st for funding. And our Executive Director's Office works with division staff to identify and prioritize needs. And then those decisions and underlying materials remain deliberative and confidential within the executive branch until November 1st. On November 1st of each year, the department budget requests become public and then are delivered to the legislature for consideration. Between November and January, the Joint Budget Committee, which referred to as a JBC of the legislature, is briefed on the department's request. And usually by March, we'll know what is included in the long bill and what will end up going in front of the General Assembly to review proposed amendments and ultimate adoption with the governor's signature. I'll next go into our department public service code of ethics, and this is in addition to the Colorado Code of Ethics and statutory requirements. And this is our public service code of ethics that promotes transparency, accountability, and excellence, and that all of our employees and temporary employees and volunteers are held to. I won't read word for word, but we have 8 tenets, and I'll briefly touch on each one. Advancing the public interest, so public to interests of the public above service to oneself. Upholding the Constitution and the law, and respecting those statutes, rules, regulations, and policies to promote the public good. Promoting public participation and partnerships, encouraging active engagement in our governance, being transparent and responsive, and respect and assist everyone in their dealings with the Department of Natural Resources. Number 4 is strengthening equity, diversity, and inclusion. And what that means at DNR is promoting an equitable, diverse, and inclusive workplace where all of our employees, partners, volunteers, and customers feel valued and respected, and to respect and value individual strengths to ensure DNR is innovative and resilient into the future. Number 5 is empowering adaptive leadership, and enjoyed hearing all of your introductions. And as you know, within natural resources, there are often adaptive challenges rather than prescriptive challenges. And in adaptive leadership, we're working together to build shared understanding and purpose, encouraging free exchange of ideas, adapting through continuous learning, and demonstrating transparent decision-making. Number 6 is demonstrating personal integrity and adhering to the highest standards of conduct. Number 7 is promoting ethical actions by empowering all of our employees to attain the highest standards of ethics, stewardships, and public service. And then number 8 is advancing our professional excellence so that we're always continually learning by strengthening our personal capabilities. Next, I'll touch on accessibility. During the pandemic, our department, along with many other state agencies, learned a lot about accessibility to our public meetings. And the next 2 slides will go over just some standards that we have, as well as some resources that we have. And any member of the public or anyone participating in the meeting who wants to request accommodations can contact our DNR's Americans with Disabilities Act coordinators, and those are on the department's website under our accessibility page. And it's a best practice to include accessibility statements on any notices of meetings of public bodies, including timelines and who to contact. And meetings should be accessible to the public real time via live streaming video or audio. And then an option for virtual attendance and virtual public comment should be provided for every meeting. If meetings are held around the state, we ask that staff should ensure that meeting locations have sufficient bandwidth to accommodate that virtual attendance. I'll briefly go over media contacts and let you know that members of the media may contact individual consortium members. And to ensure our transparency and accountability, it's important to remember that commenting on official actions, operations, or business of the department requires coordination with your staff liaisons. So that would be John or Aaron, and then public information officers. For us, that would be Megan Castle with the ECMC, or Chris Arend, our communications director in the executive director's office. So the consortium may, you all may come up with your own guidance, including individual members refraining from speaking on behalf of the entire consortium. And finally, I'll go over legislative policies, procedures, and timelines. Our Director of Legislative Affairs, her name is Daphne Gervais, and you can see her email address at the bottom of the screen. She coordinates all communication with legislators and all department-initiated legislation. So if you are contacted by a legislature for factual information or otherwise, we ask that you include your staff liaisons and then also include Daphne on that to keep her in the loop. And as you know, the General Assembly is in session January through May, but we have legislators sitting on year-round committees. And then finally, positions on bills. In the executive branch, our department does not take positions on bills unless approved to do so by the governor. We may take one of 4 different positions: support, oppose, neutral, or no position. And we ask that the consortium or boards or commissions do not take positions on bills in their official capacities. Contact Daphne with questions about the department's position. If the department is in support or opposed, we may ask particular members to testify at the legislature. And obviously, any individual member of a public body may take a position in their own personal time and not acting in their official capacity. So with that, I thank you for the hours you will spend on this topic. And I will ask Kyle, or actually first, I will go and see if there are questions. And I think
It looks like we have a question from Doug.
Okay.
Yes, my question would be, are there any guardrails or prohibitions, I would say, if maybe 3 or 4 of us somehow say, hey, there's a specific topic within our discussions that, you know, we may in smaller groups or otherwise kind of get together to have discussions. Are there any prohibitions around that, or anything we need to be conscious of as we move forward?
I think that's a great question. I will ask Kyle, your attorney with the Attorney General's office, to field that one. He's definitely more of the expert on the open meetings law. So if we can hold on to that, Kyle, will you hold that one?
Thank you.
Yes, that will be one of the first topics I cover, actually.
Great. Okay, and then any other questions for me? All right, great. I will stop sharing and then kick it over to you, Kyle.
Okay. Thank you, Wendy. Hello, everyone. My name is Kyle Davenport. I'm an assistant attorney general with the Colorado Attorney General's office. I, at least for this meeting and for the foreseeable future, will be counsel for this consortium. I want to thank you for your service, and I'm excited for the opportunity to advise you. I do have a presentation today to discuss various things, which I'll get started. I'm sharing my screen. It will include my contact information, and I encourage you to reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns. Each one of the topics that I cover today, I'm going to endeavor to be a half hour or less, could take up the full half hour and more. So I'm relatively confident that you will have questions, and more than likely, we won't be able to cover them all today. So when you see my contact information, I should have put my email on the first slide, but my email will be on the last slide. And we may need to talk more individually after this. I'm going to cover things pretty broadly today, and my goal is to pretty much to alert you to the things that exist, and so that you are aware when something may come up to contact me so we can discuss it, rather than try and get through all of the ins and outs of the various topics today. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. I'm on the first slide that just says consortium training. And I realize many of you may have experience with some of these things. I'm planning on covering pretty quickly today these topics that are on your screen right now. As I said, some of you may have a lot of experience with some of these topics. Some of you may have no experience with some of these topics. So again, I encourage you to reach out if you have questions. And we'll get started with answering consortium members White's question in regard to constraints with discussions amongst yourselves with the open meetings law and executive sessions. Colorado statute, it is the Colorado open meetings law that does provide for legal constraints on how public boards and commissions, including local boards and commissions, may conduct themselves. What I put up on the screen here is the statutory citations and the general statement of the reason that open meetings law exists. And it is, in essence, so that public policy can be conducted in public and not conducted behind closed doors and decision-making processes. This open meeting law applies, as I said, to every state agency. My kind of regular day job is to represent ECMC, and it certainly applies to state agencies like ECMC and others. Open meetings law defines what constitutes a meeting. A meeting has to be conducted in public. This is the definition. It is quite broad. What essentially means is any discussion of public business is a meeting. A meeting must be held in public with advance notice. Open meetings law covers state public bodies, local public bodies, including this consortium. And what it provides is that any meeting between two or more members for state public bodies like this constitutes something that has to be done in public and with notice. So to answer consortium member White's question, you may not discuss the business of this consortium amongst yourselves in private. That discussion has to be held in public and with advance notice to the public so that they can attend and hear your discussion. This is a little more detail. A meeting is where any business of this consortium is discussed or where you take any official action. And as you'll note at the bottom of the slide, notice is required. The consortium has a website. That's where notice of your meetings is posted so that the public may be aware and attend those meetings. Their public business is not defined in the open meetings law, but there has been some case law, and the quote here is from that case law discussing what constitutes public business. This is a point where I'd recommend if you have any concerns or something that we talk about them, you reach out to me and we talk before you have any such conversations. The best advice that I can give right now is a pretty broad statement that if it goes to a decision point for this consortium, something that the statute provides, like recommendations or studies, you need to reserve those discussions to a scheduled meeting of this consortium. Public business of the consortium doesn't mean just anything that's of public importance. I mean, you can certainly discuss things that are not related to the consortium's business, but still may be of public importance. Legislation unrelated to the consortium, any other matter is something you can discuss. But if it's the business of the consortium, again, please keep your discussions to public noticed meetings of this consortium.
We have a question from Barbara. Do you want to take questions throughout? Or
I'm sorry. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you so much for taking my question. So I've served on the Transportation Commission. I'm currently on the CWCB. The nature of the consortium, as Commissioner Messner mentioned at the beginning of our meeting, is a little bit different than a board and a commission, in that there's a lot of mutual learning that's going to be going on. And so I struggled to see how we can confine ourselves to this always publicly noticed meeting structure and still have the opportunity for this rich learning on a more frequent basis. I appreciate your advice here, Carl.
Sure. So first of all, I will note that the open meetings law only applies to discussions amongst members on this consortium. You can certainly discuss anything related to the business of the consortium with folks who are not on the consortium and learn in that manner. This is an area where if you'd like to have a discussion with another member of the consortium about particular manner, that's where I'd suggest that you reach out to me and talk about what kind of conversation you'd like to have before you have that conversation. My general advice is I don't believe in general that sort of background learning about a particular topic that may be related to the consortium business would necessarily be covered by the open meetings law. But again, it's hard to make sort of a guideline that could apply and you could apply in the future. I think we need to have conversations about exactly what you intend to discuss and with who before we make a decision about whether or not it needs to be held in a public forum.
Thanks for that.
Sure. There's another question.
Hi, I am sitting in a room with Nikki Wells and Kevin Chan because to me, fair doesn't always mean equal. And there's a lot of people who've been working in this space for a long time, and there might be able to have conversations of our experience to help bring other members who've not been in this space and don't have the same expertise up to speed. So would we not be able to have those conversations? And then how does anyone who hasn't been working in this space for a number of years ever get caught up to the people who, or at least be on some kind of playing field to have equitable and impactful input if we can't have these conversations? Or maybe I'm missing something.
Well, so I understand the concern, and it does, open meetings law does somewhat constrain the ability to have conversations, but that is the point in large part of the legislation and the statutes. As I said, I think that background information, learning about certain topics that may end up eventually informing what this consortium decides to do in terms of recommendations or studies. I think you can do that just with conversations, not necessarily in a noticed meeting. However, if it goes directly to a recommendation this consortium is considering, or some type of action this consortium is considering taking as a body, then that's where I'd recommend that you refrain from having those conversations amongst consortium members privately and have those discussions in a public meeting. Again, it would really depend on exactly what type of conversation you want to have, what the topic is, who you want to have that conversation with. And that again is where I'd recommend we have a conversation, you and I, before you have whatever conversation you're contemplating, so we can figure out exactly what needs to happen.
Oh, I see two more hands, but we also have a couple of comments in the chat, and I want to make sure those are available to you. Randy Honeycutt mentioned maybe an example would be helpful. and Barbara Vasquez provided an example that Barbara may be interested in, and it says a discussion to learn about or even a field trip to see produced water treatment operations under the control of one or more members of the consortium.
Yeah, I think again, background sort of learning and education is probably something that can happen outside of a noticed public meeting. We would, before consortium members go out to that type of trip again, I'd want to have a conversation about exactly what you're going to do, who's going to attend that. Any consortium member can go out and do these type of educational trips by themselves without another consortium member, without raising concerns with open meetings law. But where 2 or more consortium members are going on that trip, then I'd want to have a conversation about exactly what it is that you're doing and what you'll be discussing. Again, given the limited time that we have today, it's going to be really difficult to go through a series of hypotheticals. The best background or guideline that I can give you right now, I think, is if we're talking about sort of background educational things, I think that's fine to do outside of a noticed public meeting of the consortium. But the closer we get to discussions about recommendations or taking any type of formal official position of the consortium as a whole, the closer we get to things that need to happen in a noticed public meeting.
And Kyle, I just want to jump in here real quick because I know a bunch of people are going to have questions about this, and of course, slap my hand if I'm saying something I shouldn't be saying. But I understand that we are going to be sharing a lot of information. We're going to be having some cooperative learning. A lot of that cooperative learning is going to be inside of meetings and publicly noticed meetings like the one today. Some of them may even be in subgroups, and those also will have an opportunity to be published. It doesn't mean that we can't have these opportunities for shared learning and conversations and information sharing. It just means that we need to notice those meetings, and we need to do it in a public way. And so these kind of conversations happen all the time in boards and commissions, whether it's the Water Quality Control Commission, whether it's ECMC, whether it's CWCB, or you name the commission. And so we will structure ways and formats for us to be able to have these conversations and to be able to share information, as we continue to work towards the goals and objectives of the consortium and be able to share information with each other. I think what Kyle is trying to highlight here is, when in doubt, contact AAG Davenport to ensure that we're following open meetings laws. Did I do anything wrong there, Kyle?
No, that was great.
I always end my sentences with did I say anything wrong? That's fine.
That was great. Commissioner Messner, and you have done a far better job than I think I've done so far, because I actually had some hands on my screen disappear as you talked. So, in a nutshell, and I'll note too, I don't think I can see all of you. So I made my screen as big as I can, but if you've got a question and I'm not calling on you or noting that, please go ahead and pipe up. The last thing I'll note, I think this is the last thing, is this issue of does it apply, does open meetings law apply, applies to all types of conversations, emails, phone calls, and texts. And as I'll note later, in addition to open meetings law applying, CORA, the Colorado Open Records Act, applies to all of those communications as well. We'll get to CORA in a minute. I want to briefly discuss another important topic within open meetings law, and that is executive session. Open meetings law does allow this commission to meet outside of public view for certain types of topics. And the most commonly used one is to receive legal advice. We can go into a private meeting to receive legal advice, and for the other 2 topics listed on that slide right now. There is a process for that. We start an open meeting, we have a discussion, or I will state what the topic of the executive session is, and then you can vote to go into executive session. As I'll get to a little bit later, most of the time your formal actions will require just a majority of you to approve the action, but executive session is a special case that does require a 2/3 vote of the entire 31-person membership of this consortium. And so for each of our meetings, knowing who's going to be attending can be a pretty important part of whether or not we're going to be able to do some of the things that you may want to do. So I think it's going to be important going ahead to be clear about whether or not you're able to attend a meeting or not of the consortium. And again, I'll note that there is it's a relatively narrow exception. Executive session is, we can't necessarily go get around it just by my sitting in the Zoom meeting. I actually have to be providing advice for that exception to apply. Okay, so I'm going to turn to CORA briefly. CORA is the Colorado Open Records Act. Again, I'm starting, as I did with open meetings law, with kind of the purpose. And the purpose is really that essentially any written record of a public agency or body is something that the public can gain access to through a request. That any person anywhere can request public documents. They do not have to show a need for that. They do not have to explain why they want those records. Generally, that starts with a written request by a member of the public asking for certain categories of documents. A public record is generally very broadly defined. It is, and I'll summarize it by stating, anything that's written down, that you write down in the course of doing your work as a consortium member constitutes a public record that may be disclosed pursuant to a CORA request. So that's emails, texts, meeting notes, anything that you may write down could, in the course of your doing work for this consortium, could constitute a public record. And so, and that includes, as this slide states, if you're doing something on a personal device, if it is in the context of your work on this consortium, doesn't matter what device it's on, it is a public record that may be subject to disclosure. There are some exemptions from CORA. The most obvious one, and I think the one we deal with most frequently, is probably attorney-client communications. There are others that, in the interest of time, I won't go through in detail, but I do want to note that those are narrowly construed, and I would recommend that you not try to rely on any exception you may know about to protect something from disclosure. The general advice that I give to all of my clients is, if it's something that you wouldn't want to see on the front page of the Denver Post, don't write it down that way. And certainly don't, as I say to my other clients, please, just be aware of what you're writing down and how you're writing it down, especially in communications, because the default rule for CORA is everything is subject to public disclosure. I think Wendy, sorry, I just noticed a chat. Thank you for corrections. Not the best proofreader, so I appreciate letting me know when there's a problem with one of my slides. I want to briefly discuss conflicts of interest. There is a statute, the Colorado Code of Ethics, that does apply to any public official, generally including yourselves. The default rule here is, in my mind, if you ever have a concern about whether or not a member of the public may view a past work history or another something else as a conflict to the work you're doing for the consortium, it's best to disclose it. And like the discussion we had with open meetings law, this is definitely an area where I would like you to reach out to me if you ever have a concern about whether or not something may be a conflict on your in a matter that you're working on for the consortium. This is a general statement of what the Colorado Code of Ethics provides. The clearest example of what may constitute a conflict is where, as a result of a decision that the consortium may make, you could have a direct financial interest in that. And that is one of those areas where, if you certainly have any type of concern with that, I'd like to discuss it. There is a hand raised. Please go ahead.
Yes, Dave Davenport. Quick question for clarity, going back to executive session real quick, just for clarity for the consortium members. An executive session would include all members of the consortium, is that correct?
Yes, certainly. Every member of the consortium would be entitled to, and I'd like certainly as many of you as possible to attend those executive sessions.
Just want to make sure that was clear for everyone in the consortium. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarifying question. Generally, before I get to the gift ban, generally, I think most conflicts or concerns can be taken care of by just a public disclosure. An example may be in hypothetical, this person that is recommending or is advocating for a certain type of recommendation before us is someone that I worked with previously, but I haven't worked with them in a while. We haven't had discussions about this, and I can certainly be impartial in my decision on that. That's the type of disclosure you may make. I think in virtually all cases, just a disclosure would be more than sufficient to take care of that potential conflict. But as I noted, specifically in the example of a direct economic benefit, and I will be frank, I can't come up with a hypothetical right now that may result in a direct economic benefit to any of you. But if you have a concern, that's something to talk about. Ultimately, a conflict can rise to the level of where we may need to talk about you recusing yourself from decision on a particular matter. But that, in my view, is a pretty extreme hypothetical and example. And we just have to come to that conclusion in the course of our discussions. But that's one of the things that I am here for, that the other attorneys in my office are here for, is to provide you advice on things like that. The next thing I would like to turn to is what's known as the gift ban. The Colorado Constitution generally prohibits public officers from receiving anything of value as a result of their work in a particular matter. That includes certainly actual money, but as I state there, it can include many other things. This is another area where I just want you to be aware that it exists. And if you ever receive, for example, an offer for somebody to buy you lunch in relation to talking about the work that the consortium does, before you go to that lunch, please shoot me an email and let's have a conversation about how that might work. But again, this is one of those topics that can be very complex. And I just right now, for our purposes, want you to be aware that it exists. And something to think about should you ever, as I said, get an email from somebody that says, hey, I'd like to buy you lunch so we can go out and chat about this. Ultimately, this is a broad guiding principle. The appearance of any type of impropriety is just as important as any actual impropriety. My advice is that you be very conservative in this approach. If you ever are worried that the public might see something as a conflict of interest, the best course of action is to contact me and potentially disclose it at the next public meeting. The more disclosure we have, the more transparency we have, the better off we're going to be going forward. The next few things I'd like to talk about is just generally how this consortium may do its business in open meetings. And I'm going to cover three things in very broad strokes. Every board and commission and this consortium can only conduct business, make motions, take formal action if there is a quorum of members in attendance. A quorum is generally defined as a majority of you. So I think there are 31 members total, and that would mean you would need to have at least 16 members actually in attendance to take some type of formal action. That's approving a recommendation, approving the consortium taking an official position on something. At least 16 of you have to be in attendance. It doesn't have to be all of attendance in the same way. In other words, if this consortium meets in person, it is possible that one or more of you could attend via telephone and still count for the quorum, but we do need a quorum to conduct business. And as I understand it, there is going to be potentially, and Mr. Ray, I think our new director may be working on some process and policy documents that can provide some more detail in the future, and this consortium will have an opportunity to see those process and policy documents, which will further define some of these processes.
That's great. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you. So the second point is important. You all have equal rights, privileges, and obligations. No one has any more rights or access. No other consortium member has more rights or access than any others. But we do have one person which you will elect as the chair of the consortium. And in very broad strokes, so this can be further defined by the process documents, really a chair's primary function is to control the conduct of the meeting. And frankly, in my view, what that boils down to in most cases is just ensuring that you're not talking over each other when there's a free-flowing conversation. So a standard practice of most boards and commissions, once you do elect a chair, will be that you have to request permission from the chair to speak. And that can be very simple. You raise your hand and say, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, whatever name the chair would prefer, may I speak? And the chair says, sure, and you can go ahead at that point. But that's really just to avoid a number of people trying to speak all at the same time, which can get confusing and make it hard for the public to hear. So those are pretty basic rules of order. I have here what is generally how motions work. Motion is any formal action that any board, commission, this consortium may take. It starts with any member making a motion. I move that the consortium approve this recommendation. In general practice, a second member of the consortium has to speak up and say, I second that motion. And then it's on the table for a vote of all members in attendance to potentially approve or not that motion. There's more detail here. Don't think it's necessary to go through. I know I've been talking a lot and pretty fast already, so I will move on from motions. The last thing I'd like to speak to is public comment. You do have the ability to allow public comment at one or more of your meetings on any particular topic that you'd like to see public comment on. You are not required to have public comment at any of your meetings. It's an option for you, not a requirement. You may control the length of time and the subject matter for that public comment. In other words, I think it's a 3-minute time period for each public commenter is pretty common. And certainly you can say, please limit your public comment to the business of this consortium or whatever topic that you've requested public comment on. However, public comment in front of a governmental body is a limited public forum that has First Amendment protections. And so beyond that subject matter and setting a time limit for public comment, we do not have the ability to control the content. People can speak positively about decisions you made. They can speak negatively about decisions you made, and that is their right and protected by both the federal and the Colorado Constitution. That concludes my remarks and training today. I want to thank you for listening to me. I know I covered a lot. I know some of these things are very complex and maybe new to you. So that is my phone number. That's my email address. If you ever have any concerns or questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I see a question. Commissioner Member Terry.
Yes, Council Davenport, will your presentation be available to us?
I'm happy to send it to you all. Sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thanks AG Davenport and Wendy for being here with us and sharing that information. And like I indicated before, we will talk more about what processes we'll utilize as we get into some of the work that we're doing as far as disseminating information, as far as sharing information, to the rest of the consortium, as well as how we conduct our discussions about topics associated with the consortium. And so more to come on that, but appreciate AG Davenport giving us a broad overview on things that we need to be aware of as far as doing business of the state. So thank you for that. I think we are now at the point of taking a break.
Commissioner Mester, we still have a couple of raised hands. I want to make sure we cover that before we continue on to a break.
Sorry, Jolie.
Thank you. Thank you so much for recognizing that. I just wanted to elevate before we lost council and ask a clarifying question. With the possibility of Cora request, is it suggested that we have a separate consortium email? Is there standardization to that? Do we all need them, or can we utilize personal and or work emails?
Thank you. That's a good clarifying question. There's no legal requirement for you to create a separate Gmail account for consortium business, for example. If it's easier for you to do that, then I think that makes some sense. It may very well be much easier to manage your documents, your communications for your consortium business if you have a separate email address. As I noted in my presentation, if you do use your personal email address that you use for everything else, or your current work email address, the fact that it's consortium business, you may receive communications over just because it's not a specific consortium email. It's still a public record if it's related to consortium business. So if you would like to create a separate email account for consortium business to help you manage those communications, that seems like a good idea to me.
Clay?
This is Clay. I asked my question to AG and he responded that he would send out the presentation.
Oh, okay. I just saw your hand was still up. So sorry about that. Barbara?
Yeah, I want to follow up on the question about email addresses. I know that at least within DNR, the CWCB folks are having a hard time creating state email addresses for members of the board, getting them to work correctly. I had the same trouble on the Transportation Commission. Has that problem been solved? Is it possible to give all the consortium members an official email address for the consortium?
I don't have the answer to that, Barbara. I appreciate that. And I think that's something we can follow up with. Maybe Wendy, I know that your hand is raised. Do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, Barbara, I appreciate the question and the suggestion. I'll follow up with Aaron and John to see what the possibilities are.
That would be great, because that certainly makes it easier to make sure that everything is filed away and not lost in private email.
Great, thank you. Any other questions before we step away for 10 minutes? Okay, let's step away. We're running a little bit behind, but be back at 10:55. Hello, folks. Thanks for coming back from the break. And thank you for your participation so far this morning. I know that's a lot of information and it's all coming at you, and there's been a lot of talking at you. And I really do promise that not every meeting is going to be a situation where a lot of information is going to be talked at you, but there'll actually be more participation amongst all of us. But necessary to get some information out in this first meeting as kind of a shakedown cruise. And then particularly starting with the next meeting, there's going to be a lot of interaction between us as we start into the work of the consortium. And I do also promise that we are able to conduct our business in a way that is communicative and collaborative, and we'll be successfully able to work through that, even though every time I hear Kyle's talk, it scares me to death. And so, but not to worry, it's not as onerous as you may think. It just means that we conduct our business in public and we let folks know what we're doing. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Aaron again to talk a little about some more stuff.
Thanks, John. And just after Commissioner Messer said we were going to try to stop talking at you, I'm going to talk at you for a while, so apologies about that. There are three sort of administrative and logistical items I want to address in the next few minutes. Those are the election of a chair of the consortium, which you heard about a bit from Kyle, the process for receiving the per diem and reimbursement, which the statute that created the consortium provides for, and just a note about our upcoming meetings. So let's start with the election of a chair. As Kyle noted, the governing body was charged with calling this first meeting of the consortium to order, which we have. And the statute provides that at this meeting, the members of the consortium shall elect a member to serve as the chair of the consortium. According to statute, the chair of the consortium serves for 2 years, and the members of the consortium can elect a new chair as needed. So that's the statutory charge. I want to note that the duties of the chair are not outlined in statute, but our vision for that role is that the chair would coordinate with the director of the consortium, who we announced this morning, to provide administrative direction and leadership of the consortium. I'll also note that the statute does not provide for any additional compensation for the chair, so that is also a voluntary position. So our responsibility now is to elect a chair for the consortium. The process that I propose is that I will, and Barbara, I see your hand, so let me say a couple more words and then recognize your question. I will ask for nominations for that position. And then we will vote as a group to select the chair. So that's the process. We'll say more about that in a minute, but I recognize, Barbara, your hand, and happy to have your question or comment.
I was jumping the gun. I'd like to nominate John Messner as chair.
Thank you. I will recognize a nomination for Commissioner Messner. I'll also note before we get any other nominations, but I appreciate that one, that we will have time after the nominations for the nominees to accept or reject the nomination. We'll also provide some time for nominees for the chair position to make any remarks if they would like to prior to voting. So with a nomination for Commissioner Messner, Commissioner Messner, do you accept that nomination?
Sure. Thank you, Barbara. I appreciate that.
Great. I see James's hand. Or
yeah, and I also second Barbara's nomination of John Messner.
Thank you. Other nominations? Chloe, I see your hand.
Yes, I would also like to nominate Commissioner Messner.
Thank you. Nominated and accepted. Anyone have any other nominations? Thomas?
Not another one, but I would also second the nomination of Commissioner John Messner. Thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing any other nominations, we have one candidate. Before we go to a vote, Commissioner Messner, would you like to make any comments?
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks all. I appreciate the nominations and happy to serve. Super excited about the work that we're going to be doing, and yeah, excited to take on that role.
Great, thank you. So now I would like to go to a vote of the membership of the consortium. I'm going to, for purposes of clarity, call your name, and I'm going to call your name in the order that you are listed on the consortium website, which follows the order in which the appointments were made. So please listen for your name. When I call your name, you have the option of voting for or against Commissioner Messner's role as chair of the consortium. With that, I will start with Commissioner Messner.
Aye.
Tracy Kosloff.
Aye.
Tessa Sorensen.
Aye.
John Hale. John, are you with us?
Oh, yes, there we go. Yeah, I approve. Thank you.
Ian, on behalf of Tricia Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Brandy Honeycutt.
Aye.
James Rosenblum.
Aye.
Thomas Borsch.
Aye.
Joseph Ryan.
Aye.
Zahi Kath.
Aye.
Chloe Danforth.
Aye.
Harmony Cummings.
Aye.
Barbara Vasquez.
Aye.
Michael Freeman.
Aye.
Mark Hefta.
Aye.
Jeffrey Kirtland.
Aye.
Mackenzie Smith. Mackenzie, are you with us?
Yeah, it'd be helpful if I unmuted my phone. Aye.
Thank you, Mackenzie. Michelina Pollock.
Aye.
Emma Pinter.
Yes.
Sean Strode. Mr. Strode, are you with us? I will move on to Doug White.
Aye.
Grant Tupper.
Aye.
Eric England.
Aye.
Clay Terry.
Aye.
Kevin Chan.
Aye.
Irene Andrus.
Aye.
Nikki Wells.
What did you say? I'm sorry.
Nikki, I saw you unmuted yourself but didn't hear your vote. Nikki, you look like you're muted to me. We were not able to hear you.
Sorry. Aye.
Thank you. Joey Bronner.
Aye.
And Ember Michelle.
Aye.
Is there anyone that I missed? All right, that was 28 votes in favor of Commissioner Messner as chair of the Colorado Produced Water Consortium. I appreciate you all making that decision, and I will recognize our new chair. Thank you, Commissioner Messner. Now, Chair Messner.
Thank you, Aaron, and thank you all. Yeah, that's all super embarrassing. So let's just keep going. Next up is a little bit of general housekeeping information from Aaron. And so I'll kick it back to you, Aaron.
Thank you, Chair Messner. The next thing on my list is clarifying for you all the per diem and reimbursement process that is allowed for in statute. So House Bill 23-1242 provides that members of the consortium will receive per diem and reimbursement for expenses. There's a process that you will need to follow in order to receive that per diem and reimbursement, and I will follow up with you via email with the details of that. There'll be some forms that you have to submit. But for clarity, I want to talk through what statute provides so that you're aware of what that compensation is. First, statute provides that you be reimbursed for actual and necessary expenses incurred while performing your additional duties. So when you attend an in-person meeting and there are expenses associated with that, you will be able to request reimbursement for those expenses. There is a form that you will fill out that will be returned to DNR, and I will include that in the email that I send out to you with the details. Second, the statute also provides that there's a per diem that all consortium members are entitled to receive $50 for each meeting attended. I will also, as I mentioned, follow up with an email on how to set up receipt of that per diem. We'll need some paperwork from you in order to do that, but look for an email from me with the details. There are a couple of additional pieces that I want to make sure people are aware of. So in addition to that per diem that all members receive, members who are appointed under the subsection related to representing disproportionately impacted communities or communities of color and who reside in a disproportionately impacted community are eligible to receive an additional $150 per diem for each meeting attended. So in the materials that I distribute to you, I will make a note of that and ask you to attest to your eligibility for that additional per diem. The one qualification to that is that for members who would otherwise be eligible for that additional per diem, if as part of your typically assigned regular job duties, you receive professional compensation for participating in the consortium, then you would not be eligible for that additional per diem. That language is in the statute. So if you think you're affected by that, please read that language. I will also share it in writing with you in my follow-up. And if you have questions about your eligibility, please reach out to me directly and we can work through that. So the takeaway from this is, one, I want you to be aware of your eligibility for reimbursement and per diem. And two, please be on the lookout for additional communication from me with the details of how to make yourself eligible and receive both reimbursement and per diem. So with the knowledge that additional details are coming, any questions about that provision for consortium members? Okay, not seeing any. If you do have them, please reach out to me directly, and I'm happy to discuss that in greater detail and be on the lookout for additional communication from me. The last bit of housekeeping I want to address is to note that statute requires that the consortium meet monthly for the first year of our work and quarterly thereafter. Our next scheduled meeting is October 6th. That's a Friday. We plan for that meeting to take place in person here in Denver. And we will provide additional details about that meeting to you, but that will be our first chance to get together as a group in person, and more details about that meeting will be distributed soon, so please keep that on your calendar. I see some questions about that in the chat, which I will get to, but first I see Tessa's hand, so I want to recognize Tessa.
I was just pointing out the question in the chat. That's all.
Yeah, thank you for that. And Harmony in the chat says, to confirm, will the in-person meeting on October 6th be open to the public? We are still working on the agenda for that meeting. There may be portions of that meeting which are related to some internal business of the consortium, but in general, our meetings are open to the public, as Kyle noted in his presentation. And we expect there will be opportunities for public comment in the future as well. So not only will members of the public be able to listen into the meetings, we'll also have opportunities for the public to participate in future meetings. The details of that we are still working on, but appreciate that comment. that is everything that I wanted to cover. We're going to shift next to some discussion of the legislation that created this group and the responsibilities of the consortium. But before I do that, any other questions about the sort of general housekeeping notes that I covered? I see your hand.
I do just want to add my question for asking if people could attend. In working with this legislation, there were a lot of people who have a lot of hesitancies about the legislation and this consortium, and did a lot of work to try to build those bridges and to ease doubts. And in the theme of transparency and continuing to build trust, I would really try to encourage for that October 6th in all the meetings, especially initially as we are launching, to be open to the public, whether they come or not. I think it's important that we at least show that that door is open instead of closed, from the voices and the concerns that I am the one that personally interfaces with. So just highlighting that.
I appreciate that comment and that sentiment. So that's absolutely something that we endeavor to do. Thank you. Other questions or comments? Okay, if you have any questions or comments or need any assistance in terms of your participation, please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly. Once our director is officially on board, she will be handling much of that, but I'm always here to be a resource to you and welcome you to reach out to me if you have any questions. With that, I will hand the gavel back to Chair Messner for the next step of our meeting.
Thanks, Aaron. Next up, I just want to talk really quick about just the Colorado Produced Water Consortium and the legislation that created it, and talk a little bit about just a general overview of what our duties and responsibilities and deliverables are associated with the legislation. Again, a lot of work is going to be done over the next few months as far as strategic planning and coming up with strategies to tackle some of these deliverables, but just to give you a quick overview, and I've submitted most of this information to everyone already, but I'll be relatively brief with this, but I think it's good just to kind of give a general overview of it. So House Bill 23-1242 does require that oil and gas operators report specified information on water use and oil and gas operations in the state of Colorado, or to the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission, which is now Energy and Carbon Management Commission. It does indicate that the commission must adopt new rules and creates this consortium to study the use and recycling of produced water in oil and gas operations. The mission of the Colorado Produced Water Consortium, as per the legislation, is what I indicated earlier on at the beginning of the meeting, and so I won't discuss that again. The membership of the consortium is us, and that membership consists of representation from ECMC, Division of Water Resources, CDPHE, state and federal agencies, research institutions, and state institutions of higher education with expertise in produced water, environmental NGOs with experience in produced water, members of the oil and gas industry with representation from the DJ Basin, the Piceance Basin, the San Juan Basin, and the Raton Basins. It includes local government representation from areas with reuse and recycling of produced water. And it also has specific seats for individuals with experience and expertise in produced water. It also has specific seats laid out for NGOs that work on or advocate for environmental justice or conservation, and seats that either work with or advocates for disproportionately impacted communities or communities of color, or that reside in disproportionately impacted communities. The legislation did allow for one full-time director of the Colorado Produced Water Consortium, who is employed by the Department of Natural Resources. That now is Hope Dalton, and we're very excited to have her. And there was also be an additional position, Director of Research, that was associated with legislation that will be hired at a later date. The director position is the staff lead for the Colorado Produced Water Consortium. Responsibilities would include, amongst other things, administration, coordination of meetings and membership, grant writing and budgeting, contracting for analysis and studies, providing recommendations from consortium to agencies and the legislature for policy rulemakings and legislation to promote reuse, recycling, and beneficial use of produced water. They're also responsible for facilitating the work and deliverables of the Colorado Produced Water Consortium, as indicated by House Bill 23-1242. So to the responsibilities. And so consortium recommendations and responsibilities as per HB 23-1242 is to first develop the membership of the consortium, which we have done. Today is our first meeting. Congratulations to us. Hire a director, which we now have done. Congratulations to us again. And then on May 1st, 2024, we have to develop some recommendations on how state and federal agencies can better coordinate regulatory policies related to produced water. On September 1st, 2024, we have to highlight and develop topics related to produced water that we want to work on as a consortium. On November 1st, 2024, we are responsible for writing recommendations for any legislation or agency rules needed to remove barriers to the safe reuse and recycling of produced water, taking into consideration environmental justice issues, legal issues, testing standards and treatment, research gaps in the treatment of produced water, including emissions, water sharing agreements, and infrastructure and storage of produced water, including pits. By December 1st of 2024, we should be making recommendations on short and long-term produced water reuse and recycling goals for the state. By March 1st, 2024, developing guidance documents and case studies to promote best practices for in-field reuse and recycling. By July 1st, 2024, analyze and report on current produced water infrastructure, storage, and treatment facilities across the state with an emphasis on the DJ Basin. By August 1st, 2024, analyze and report on volumes of produced water in each basin available for reuse and recycling in comparison to the total volume of water necessary for the completion activities and new oil and gas activities. By September 1st, 2024, analyze and reports on infrastructure, storage, and technology necessary to achieve different levels of reuse and recycling of produced water in oil and gas basins across the state with an emphasis on the DJ Basin. And by July 1st, 2025, to evaluate analytical and toxicological methods employed during produced water treatment and assess tools used to evaluate produced water and its potential for use outside of the oil field. The consortium is also responsible for providing annual reports to legislative committees and to the SMART Act hearings. In addition to the roles and responsibilities of the consortium, I think it's important to know some of the responsibilities that the legislation created for the Energy and Carbon Management Commission. So, in addition to the development of the Colorado Produced Water Consortium, the Energy and Carbon Management Commission is instructed to accomplish the following. On September 1st, 2023, operators shall report to the commission monthly on a per well basis. Number one, the volume in barrels of all freshwater used downhole. Number two, volume in barrels of all reused and recycled water used downhole. Number three, volume in barrels of all produced water that is produced from the well. Number four, volume of produced water that is removed from location for disposal, including disposal method and disposal location. And number five, volume in barrels of all produced water that is produced from well and is reused or recycled on another well at the same location, or removed from location for reuse or recycling at a different location. By January 2nd, 2024, operators shall report to the commission quarterly on a location basis. Number one, volume in barrels of fresh water used and the categorical source of that fresh water as either industrial, commercial, municipal, or agricultural. Number 2, volume in barrels of reused or recycled water and the source of that water. Number 3, volume in barrels of disposed produced water and the disposal method and location. Number 4, volume in barrels of produced water that is removed from location for reuse or recycling. And number 5, total volume of produced water in barrels. And finally, by December 31st, 2024, the legislation requires that the commission shall adopt rules to require a statewide reduction in freshwater usage and corresponding increase in the usage of reused or recycled produced water at oil and gas location. The rules shall consider, number 1, data in reports filed as part of new reporting requirements. Number 2, recommendations the Produced Water Consortium develops. And the rules shall include, number 1, requirements for new OGDPs and substantial modifications to existing permits to include a plan specifying the methods and locations for treatment of produced water, quantifying reused or recycled produced water used in place of fresh water, describing emission controls associated with produced water treatment and storage, and any other requirements the commission determines necessary for implementation of stated goals. Number 2, a prohibition against placement of new centralized produced water storage or treatment facilities in a disproportionately impacted community. Number 3, a requirement that the operator quantify and report for each oil and gas location the vehicle miles traveled in relation to fresh and produced water management, including reused and recycling. Number 4, a requirement for each oil and gas production basin, an iterative and consistent increase in the use and recycling of produced water without increasing associated emissions. Number 5, establish based on recommendations from the consortium, an iterative and consistent schedule of dates that will significantly increase the usage of reused or recycled produced water and decrease the amount of fresh water used in oil and gas operations, while ensuring the protection of public health, safety, welfare, the environment, and wildlife resources. Number 6 may include oil and gas basin specific benchmarks to comply with the above requirements. And finally, number 7, the commission will include cumulative impacts of water in its cumulative impacts reporting. And so that is a mouthful, and also the requirements that are required as per HB 23-1242. And so just wanted to set the stage for that, understanding that it is a significant load that we're undertaking in a pretty aggressive timeline. And so really appreciate folks being here and being willing to work on these targets and goals. But I also want to emphasize that the Colorado Produced Water Consortium is more than just the deliverables set out in the first 2 or 3 years of the legislation. It's also an opportunity to look at produced water across the state of Colorado and come up with strategic goals and plans for topics related to produced water that this group comes up with. And so we are not limited to the legislation. We do have to accomplish the legislation, but we also have the opportunity to develop some goals and objectives and from this group. And I encourage us to do that as well, and not lose sight of the fact that this Produced Water Consortium is a long-living produced water consortium that I think has a lot of opportunity to do some pretty great things in this space. And so, so with that, I'm happy to take any questions that you all may have on what I just presented, but just wanted to give a quick overview of that as we start to dive into the next topics. All right, so I don't see any questions. So next topic is just general information on kind of how we got here and what's going on in other produced water consortiums around the state by Dr. James Rosenblum. So I kick it to you, James.
Can you hear me, John and everyone?
Yes.
Okay, great. So Today, I'll just kind of briefly talk about some information on produced water consortiums. And again, James Rosenblum, Research Assistant Professor at Colorado School of Mines in the Civil and Environmental Engineering Department. Kind of take you through a history lesson here of really last, I'd say, 4-ish years on produced water consortiums across the West, I guess, New Mexico and Texas. So in 2019, the New Mexico Produced Water Consortium was formed. I was actually lucky enough to be in the room when Doug White and the folks from NMED, New Mexico State, had the initial meeting, and NGL made the donation to form the New Mexico Produced Water Consortium. And really the goal here was to develop a framework to fill knowledge gaps for New Mexico specific produced water. And just for those that aren't aware, New Mexico and Texas have really, really large volumes of produced water relative to parts of Colorado. And I think just in general volumes as a whole are much larger down there. And so really the hope there is to establish regulations and policies for the treatment of produced water. And this bottom left corner image was the original kind of notice of this formation from New Mexico Environment Department and New Mexico State University. And it really forms between the two, with the bulk of the work and research occurring in New Mexico State, with NMED kind of being there as a government advisory body. And, really over the past 3.5 to 4 years, the New Mexico Produced Water Consortium has really done a lot of great work. They have independently funded research projects. Well, I should start that unlike Colorado and even Texas, New Mexico is at this point purely industry funded. So that's funded by memberships through oil and gas companies, midstream companies like NGL or ExxonMobil, Chevron. Those are the largest funding sponsors, I believe, to date. And so those funds are used to pay for the core team, directors, research director, and anybody that's part of the core team. And we've had folks in kind of our early meetings speak from the New Mexico Produced Water Consortium, as well as I believe the Texas as well. And so those funds were used to support the core team as well as fund independent research projects. So they did have an RFP process where ideas for small pilots and research projects were submitted. And as far as I'm concerned, I believe some of that data is on the website here, and I'll happily provide a link in the chat here shortly. They do have multiple working groups, which I'll go through on the next slide, and they have an annual and biannual meeting, kind of a conference style, with kind of the latest and greatest in the produced water space, from treatment to analysis to risk and tox. So it's been a really good space for produced water data generation, knowledge sharing from academia and industry. And really, we just really hope to, from my perspective, from the research side, really hope to build off of a lot of the great work that New Mexico and that whole team has done these past few years. And kind of just to kind of run through this here. So here's the consortium that was stood up, kind of by industry funding, program and research directors, again, with NMED and New Mexico State. And here are the 7 areas. So they have a water quality data portal, and that is the idea for folks to upload data from treatment to volumes. I think most at this point is more volume based. They're really kind of needing more water quality data. It's a big shortfall in the space. Treatment technology evaluations, that would be water treatment technologies to treat this water for reuse in the field, to theoretical reuse outside the field. I'll come back to the risk and tox because that's the one I know the most about. And Chloe Danforth, who is part of that working group, is actually on the call. They have a public education outreach, a infrastructure and scenario planning, and then a straight state produced water coordination council, and then just applications for this type of water. These are the working groups that the New Mexico Produced Water Consortium's had and has had for 3+ years. And so the risk and tox group is one that I've participated in to some degree. Again, I know Chloe has been there from the beginning and is there for every meeting. And here is an update from December of last year that Josh Butler, who at the time was leading the Human Health and Environmental Risk Framework. Again, I'm not going to spend much time on this, but just to show you, this is some of the work products that these working groups are generating. So they've developed a risk framework for produced water, kind of a proposed framework, I should say. that the working group and subgroup has developed together. And this is really the experts from NMED, from Environmental Defense Fund, Chevron, industry and academia in the region. And this is just an output of what they will apply this risk framework to data when it gets into the data portal or data is generated in this space. And I'm not going to spend any time on it, but just to see what a work product might look like and how they might evaluate produced water. And again, this is a framework that in our consortium, hopefully we can again just build off of all this great work that's already happening in the space, and happy to share these slides with whomever at the end of the call. And again, a lot of this information, and Chloe can maybe speak to it better than I, but I believe can be found on the New Mexico Produced Water Consortium website. So kind of moving on to the next website or next consortium would be the Texas Produced Water Consortium. It's a little newer, formed in June of 2021. This was a state-funded consortium, kind of bringing experts together in Texas. Again, this is focused on produced water across Texas, but a big focus would be on the Permian or West Texas. Senate Bill 601 formed that consortium, and it was a short 1 to 2 year formation for it to generate guidance, and in this case, a white paper. And so at this point, I do have the link at the bottom. Again, I will share the link in the slides, but this is on the Texas Produced Water Consortium website. You Google Texas Produced Water Consortium, will take you right to this document. So beneficial use of produced water in Texas, challenges, opportunities, and the path forward. This is page 4, I think, for the key findings. This is a 50 or 60 page document that goes through a lot of good volume, treatment technologies, potential costs, a really great document, once again, for us to in Colorado to gather information from. And kind of with that, this is kind of take us back about a little over a year now when John and you and I had our first meeting, and the idea that New Mexico had started a produced water consortium, and they have their own unique challenges in New Mexico. Lots of water, much higher salinity, salt level, making the treatment a much bigger challenge. Same thing with Texas and Colorado. We don't quite have those salinity challenges, meaning the technology side of things isn't as critical to advancing the space, but the analysis, the unknowns, and all the other evaluation methods for understanding what is in the water and what's been removed are key challenges. So, this has just, again, been a year and a half in the making, and kind of, I think, provides a quick update on what's been happening in space, in the consortium space, specifically in New Mexico, Texas, and obviously we're here in Colorado now. So that's all for me, John. And do we have any?
Great. Thanks, James. Any questions for James? Well, I appreciate that, and always good to learn about what some of the other produced water consortiums are doing. And in fact, I think that it's probably a good idea to continue to be updated on the work that other consortiums are doing as we engage in our work over the next couple of years. And so we'll keep tabs on that, and hopefully invite some folks from those consortiums to come and present to us, as we deem appropriate. One thing I want to note, and Kyle forgot to mention this, but as far as the utilization of chat in meetings like this, it's appropriate to utilize it to share links or to update presentations, as James just did. As far as comments go in there, in order to be able to stay transparent to the folks who are listening on to the meetings, better to raise your hand and be recognized to share your thoughts on a particular topic than utilize the chat feature. So, so with that, I want to take a second here and introduce Jeremy Stevens and Marv Widener from Managing Results LLC. They are a couple of individuals, or at least Marv is, that I've had an opportunity to work with in a previous life as a county commissioner for Gunnison County. They do a wonderful job in working with local governments and state governments and other entities to do results-oriented strategic planning. I find their approach to be super pragmatic, incredibly helpful in helping us craft what our vision is and what our methods are for achieving our goals. And really excited to have them as part of our consortium process. And so with that, I will kick it off to you, Jeremy and Marv, to share a little bit about what you're doing and what next steps might look like. Oh, I think you're muted, Marv.
Thanks. I've been muted all morning. Thanks. Thank you, Commissioner Messner, and also to the governing body for giving us this opportunity to work with this remarkable group of people on this most important issue for our state. A little bit about our background. We just completed our 25th year last month, working with cities and counties across the nation, as well as many state agencies, and in our past, some federal agencies as well. We are not experts in produced water. We are experts in results-oriented strategic planning and in managing the process in a way that works for individual groups. Some of our background has touched on conservation, on natural resources. Some of the groups that we've worked with in the past are the Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission. We worked with 4 states during that period of time. We also did some, I think, groundbreaking work with the natural resource conservation folks in USDA. We also worked with the Colorado Water Quality Division in years past, and also U.S. Forest Service for some major work with them. So we are not experts in what you do, but we are, I think, pretty well experienced, as Commissioner Messner said, in a strategic planning process. We've worked with a lot of organizations like yours that are publicly funded. Right now, we're working, for instance, with the Oregon Association of Community Corrections Directors as an association. So our work with you will be very much about helping you express the direction that you want the commission or the consortium to focus on. We have outlined a few steps. The first step is that we want to find where there is alignment and consensus on the most important issues for the consortium to focus on. And the first step that we'll take in that regard will be individual interviews with you. I hope Kyle will approve that, since we're not talking to 2 of you at once. And we will be in touch shortly, and Jeremy's going to sort of outline that process. We will bring all of your input then into the October 6th meeting. I know that Aaron's still working on the agenda for that. But our anticipation is the lion's share of that meeting will be focused on your strategic plan. The plan itself will have 2 major elements. One is broad priority areas, and then within each of those, there'll be measurable, observable results that you will all identify. Our consultancy process is that we do not write strategic plans for anyone. We are there to help you write your strategic plan. So it will be an intensely and very focused, facilitated process for you, the commission, or I'm sorry, the consortium, did that again, to express what you think are the most important priorities and the specific measurable results that you want to achieve. This typifies our approach to strategic planning. As Commissioner Messner said, we're very practical and we're very results oriented. So we will help you express yourself in that way. I think I'll turn it over to my partner, Jeremy, to talk a little bit about the interview process. the time frame is pretty short, so we're going to be getting after this right away. The other thing I'd mention is how important it is that all of you, as many of you as possible, are present and in person at the October 6th meeting. That will be an extremely important beginning for our strategic planning process. We will complete as much of that as we can on that day. We anticipate that it very well may also continue into a portion of the November or even December meetings, because we want to make sure that the strategic plan expresses fully the direction that the consortium wants to take, and we will make sure that that happens. So Jeremy?
Thank you, Marv. Can everybody hear me okay? I think earlier in the conversation when folks were introducing themselves, Eric mentioned that he was I think I wrote down a farm boy from Northern Colorado. If you can't tell already, I'm a farm boy from Eastern Tennessee. So again, really excited about the opportunity to work with you all. As Marv noted, our strategic planning process is we follow a very practical approach. And one of the very first steps is to really get input into the process or allow the process to be informed by you. And so our hope is that early next week, Monday, that you will get a communication about some interview time slots that will be available next week and the first of the following week. Again, the idea is that we want to get this information so that we can turn it around, compile it, and be ready to present it back to you as a consortium at the October 6th meeting. But from a practical perspective, we're going to use a third-party piece of software that's free that we use a lot in recreational sports called Sign Up Genius. And we will lay out a number of time slots on a number of days. And you all as consortium members can just sign up for the 30-minute time slot that fits best with your schedule. These would be phone interviews. And we would ask that you come to your phone interview kind of ready to talk about the 2 or 3 topics that you would like or issues that you would like the consortium to focus on over the next 2 to 5 years. And again, we don't have a lot of time for these interviews. We've got a lot of folks. But what we do want to do, as Marv said earlier, is to find where our passions align, where there is consensus, so that as a consortium, you all are able to accomplish good things for the state of Colorado. So again, barring any conflicts, I would ask you to look for an email with a link to a Sign Up Genius, probably first of the week. And again, these conversations will be via phone. It's a lot easier to do that. And that will enable us to get the information we need to be prepared for October 6th. Marv?
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. One thing I failed to add is that I am in Colorado. I live in Gunnison.
Yeah.
I'm about 20 feet from the Gunnison River right now. And I've been here for 11 years. I got here as soon as I could. Any questions?
How's the fishing this fall?
Oh, the fishing has been great. The trout out on Blue Mesa here in the river has been amazing, and the perch fishing has been a blast.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to hear. I do miss fishing every afternoon.
Well, come on back, John. Let's get out on the boat.
Yeah. Marvin, Jeremy, we're super excited to have you on board, and looking forward to your help and guiding us through the process. And so thank you for that. And I think everyone has your email addresses already from an email I sent out this morning. If not, you will send information out to them soon that will provide information for contacting you if they have any questions. But thank you for joining us on our adventure here over the next few months. And so appreciate having you all.
We're looking forward to it.
Thank you, John.
And with that, we are, I think at the end of the formal agenda. Now, I do want to make sure we take a little bit of time here, and I can't believe we're actually on schedule. That's unheard of for me. Does anyone have any questions or closing thoughts that they'd like to share as we kind of close down today's meeting? I know today's meeting was a lot of information. It was a shakedown cruise. It was a little bit vanilla. I do promise you that we'll have an opportunity to dive into some really interesting and challenging topics, over the next few months. And really, I'm looking forward to being curious about everyone's perspectives and their thoughts on the topics as we engage in this. But certainly want to create an opportunity here for anyone who may have closing comments or questions. Tessa?
Thank you, Chair. I think I just want to point out that we have a wonderfully diverse group here, and I'm really looking forward to the results that come out of Marv's exploration soon for where the overlaps between our diverse perspectives, backgrounds, and priorities will actually coincide, because I think that'll give us a lot of insight into some great directions. So I wanted to just second what we've kind of all said here today in terms of just being grateful that we have this diverse of a group in one place talking about this, because I think it's really going to give an edge to the results we can come up with over the next year. And I do believe, to confirm with you, Mr. Chair, that we will have details on not just the in-person meeting, but also logistics such as parking, location, things like that. It is downtown, so parking can be a bit challenging on occasion, but there are certainly some spots nearby.
Thanks for that, Tessa. And yeah, more information to come, details and everything that everyone always wanted to know. So, Harmony?
I had a couple of notes that I made, and one of them goes back to the opening and your quote from Walt Whitman, to be curious and not judgmental. I like that. And I also think we need to add an and accountable to ourselves, to our communities, to our planet, and to future generations. I do find that that's something that's missing in a lot of spaces and a lot of work. But I did really like that note to try to come to this with open minds and being open to conversations. One of the other things that the last speaker talked about, that they weren't not an expert in produced water. I argue, and maybe some people in this call would disagree, but that there is no expert in produced water because of the amount of unknowns. And I think that that's crucial as we move forward this work, that there are going to be consequences, some of them unintended, but some of them intended because of the benefits that some people will bring. I definitely thought it was interesting, the takeaway that people on the consortium can't profit from the work of the consortium. I still struggle with that, because a lot of people sitting in this room will benefit from the recycling of produced water, and we want there to be the recycling of produced water. So I'm not sure how we walk that line. I appreciate Tessa's comments last too about diversity, but I look at this screen and I think we have a ways to go to really having a lot more diversity. I'm excited that there's a start, and we definitely had to advocate hard for that in this legislation, but we can always be doing more to be more inclusive of community voice, and those have been left out of these procedures. And I look forward to finding ways to do that as we move ahead. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Harmony. Barbara?
Yes, I had a prosaic question. Can you tell us who is on the governing body? I'm not sure. I knew there was one, and who sits on it.
Sure. Governing body consists of myself and Tracy Kozloff, and at the time it was Tricia Oath. And the governing body was developed as part of the legislation to appoint the consortium, the majority of the consortium members. And so the governing body doesn't have additional authority or responsibilities associated with it, but rather to create appointment structure that didn't have to directly be appointed by the director of the Department of Natural Resources to minimize some burden there, but actually have the executive director of the Department of Natural Resources appoint the governing body, who then appointed the majority of the consortium membership, although there was 6 members that were appointed by legislators.
Thanks so much for that.
Clay?
Yes, Commissioner, thanks for recognizing my question. Really more along the lines of assistance. Hopefully you and AAG Davenport can give us some guidelines about how we reach out to one another and get to know one another due to the huge diversity and the great expertise that's here. The ability to interact as consortium members, I think, is a critical thing. And just some guidelines about how we do that so that we are in compliance with the CORA and open meetings law and those kinds of things, and still have the ability to, to get to know one another and parse questions that we believe are going to be critical to specific areas of investigation.
Sure, I appreciate that, Clay, and more information to come on that, and some more specificity. And certainly, if you have any specific questions on that, you can reach out to AAG Davenport and can provide direct responses to you. But like I said, I mean, these requirements that AAG Davenport laid out from statute, open meetings law, and such are what every board and commission is working under the state of Colorado. And so certainly there's opportunities within all the boards and commissions to be able to interact, to be able to share information, to be able to discuss the topics that we're going to be discussing. And so and this being a brand new consortium, we'll be developing more specific policies and guidelines specific to this. We don't get the opportunity of pulling the policies and guidelines off the shelf as other boards and commissions have to be able to present to you all. So those are all a work in progress, and we'll be building this ship as we're sailing it. And so stay tuned is all I can say there.
Okay, thanks.
I don't see anything else. So with that, I think we will adjourn today's meeting. I really want to say thank you, and I want to apologize for talking at you so much today. We won't do this again. We will actually have a lot more interaction, a lot more involvement. It was just to try to get that amount of information across initially. It was the format we had to utilize, but we will all be participating in future meetings moving forward. And so thank you for your patience in hearing all of that information today. And thank you again for your service to the state of Colorado, and certainly looking forward to the work we'll do together. So thank you. Have a great rest of the afternoon and weekend. I'm going to bed. I've been up since 3 in the morning, and so have a wonderful day. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, John.
Thank you all.
You can dream of fishing, John.
Thanks, everybody.
Gunnison.